Opinions and ideas expressed in the following Moraine Valley Broadcast Channel recording are those of its creators and do not represent the views of Moraine Valley Community College.
Welcome to 600 Seconds. This is your host, Jay. I'm here with...
This is Stephanie Torres, Paulina Castro,
Hala Head.
And today we will be talking about the Fight for 15. What do you guys have to say about it?
Well, I feel it's a great idea, the Fight for 15. I read in the New Yorker an article called Dignity by William Finnegan, how it all started with 200 workers from around 40 fast food outlets in New York City. And these were workers not just from McDonald's, but also Burger King, Wendy's, Taco Bell, KFC, Domino's. It just really impressed me. How about you, Stephanie?
I agree with the Fight for 15 because it supports the families in need. That way they don't have to depend on public assistance programs.
I also support the Fight for 15 because it's a great for the government. The government doesn't have to help the people who are under poverty. And
well, what are your views behind that?
Well, my views behind that is that like people who are making under 15 an hour are under minimum wage, so which makes them underneath the poverty line, which they depend on government. So when you depend on government, the people with high wages have to pay for your like food stamps, all the government help, because we're paying it through taxes.
Okay, well, I see that we're all on the same page here. I have a few questions.
Well, how do you feel about it, Jamie?
Well, I'm for it. I totally agree with the Fight for 15. In my opinion, I believe if we raise our minimum wage to 15, that our economy will get better. So this is a question for all of you guys. Through your studies, has your opinion changed about the Fight for 15? At first, were you against it, and then as you did your study, did you go for it?
Yes, at first I was against it because I was thinking the same way as the memes all over the internet are saying, how a person at McDonald's will make the same thing as a person who works in the back of an ambulance or a nurse or etc. But because I was uninformed, I didn't have enough information to like actually speak of that. Now that I've done research and actually searched up, I've realized that the Fight for 15 still keeps people at $30,000 a year, which is still a really low amount of income, but it still helps.
Well, with you bringing up the memes, I actually have a meme right here. On one side, we have protesters for the Fight for 15 for it, and then on the other side, we have a picture of soldiers and show.
Let's say, sorry, burger flippers, you really aren't worth it. That's very offensive.
Well, why do you even think that they would put these two next to each other? What do you think that they gained from that?
People who are uninformed about the Fight for 15 will take it as if like people who are receiving 15 an hour is the same thing as anyone who has an education. So they don't see it as people who work at fast food restaurants deserve to be having 15 an hour because they are uneducated and they are working at fast food. They're not actually doing anything. That's really super important.
Most people think that if you work at McDonald's, you're a lazy person, you have no education. But if we raise our minimum wage to 15 an hour, we could have the poor going to school because they could actually afford it.
I have a question here from one of our listeners out there, and it states, what opinions on this topic have you come across on social media? What are your perspectives on these things?
Well, in social media, everybody has an opinion, that's for sure. I did post it on my social media to see what kind of responses I would get, and I got a lot of them. One person here, he said, fast food restaurants is not a career, that's a teenager job. Well, they don't have the facts, so they're not speaking the truth here. It's not a teenager job. Yes, a lot of teenagers have this as a job, but studies show that many people in their late 20s with a family have to depend on this type of work, and a lot of people that are are working in McDonald's are actually working 2 jobs because they can't afford to maintain their family with what they're getting from their first job.
Do you see any themes or commonly reoccurring arguments about this fight for 15?
Most people think the wages would go up of living, meaning everything's going to cost more for the public, but that's going to be false.
What Stephanie said was super correct. I've also read that, but they also don't know facts, because when you increase someone's wages of a yearly income, then when they have more, they're obviously going to spend more. They're not going to just sit there and just keep the money all to themselves. People who will get paid less won't buy anything because they're so tight on money, but when you have more, you're going to buy things that you need and then that you also want.
Mm-hmm.
So the more money you have, the more you spend, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, but it's not also just about McDonald's. It's about people who work as babysitters.
Public
right.
health care.
Yeah, so everybody that's making under $15 an hour.
Even professors and jobs.
Well, guys, I see that you guys are targeting McDonald's and fast food workers, but actually a study has shown that what?
Public health care.
That public health care, like nurses, no, not nurses, what the fuck?
I had it written down. My bag is at home. I came from the hospital.
Public health care, and then the professors that work part-time.
Such as public health work.
Public
Home health care.
Home health care workers.
Such as home health care workers.
All over. Cut all this.
And professors that make actually under $30,000 a year because they work part-time, known as adjunct. With me saying that, do you agree with me or do you not?
I totally agree with you. It's 43% of Americans make less than $15 an hour. That's a big number.
That is a very big number. I agree with you on that.
Those 43% are actually fighting with the fight for 15, and people don't realize that those 43% have children, they have families, and everything's so tight on them, and then we're paying tax for them so they can receive benefits from the government, which causes us to spend more money on taxes. And if they were having more than 15, if they were getting paid 15 an hour, then they don't have to worry about not having enough, and that 43% will be way less.
I don't think anyone working over 40 hours a week should be under poverty, because they need to support their families as well and not depending on a second job.
I've heard some arguments on social media about robots replacing us in the workplace. What do you guys have to say about that?
Well, me personally, I think that's it's really cool for businesses. It will grab people's attention, of course, but despite the fact that people in the back are working behind the robots to make the food, and they're still technically working in the back, but then they will get rid of lots of cashiers and people who are working up front. But robots is a good idea for businesses, but as for people as a replacement and making jokes about it, that's unnecessary. I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah, there's a restaurant. We were reading about. It's called Itza, where it's already a fully automated restaurant. It has everything automated, but they still have people working in the background cooking. So it doesn't look like it's going to replace people. So it looks like it's just a threat. You know, people are just.
So you're looking at it as a mask.
You know, they're just putting it in the memes. How they're going to replace you. Soon you're going to get replaced by machines, and it's already out there. It's already happening, and they're not replacing people. It's the machine. It's going to happen anyway. The kiosks.
Yeah, I have seen at some restaurants I've gone to where you have a kiosk and you order your food on there, or you have the choice to go to the cashier. Most of the time you see younger kids that use the kiosk, and the older people, they actually like talking to someone face to face to order their food. What do you guys have to say?
ITSA has a great concept of grabbing people's attention, which is great. Like I said earlier, for businesses, it's quick for teenagers, younger people, but elderlies, they don't know how to use electronics, so they're not going to really focus on that. So at the end, we're always going to need our cashiers or our front workers.
Yeah.
Overall, I think this is just a hypothetical argument towards those that do not support the Fight for 15, and this argument is invalid, saying that the jobs are going to be replaced by machines.
Well, the reality is that the new technology is here, and it's happening, and they're not going to get replaced. So everybody has a different opinion.
Why do you think the general public feels the way they do about the Fight for 15?
Well,
they're just trying to frame an issue.
Well, I think is that they're all uneducated about this entire topic. Before I agreed to it, I was against it because I was uneducated. After reading all the articles and seeing the memes and everything that we read throughout the class, it proves that the Fight for 15 is only a help. It's not going to affect anyone except the people underneath the poverty line.
Paulina, do you have anything else to add on to our...
Well, just the Fight for 15 uses a lot of real people, real examples, lots of numbers, and the case against it has no real stories, no data, no valid point.
You can't make a statement without the fact. Point said.
I feel like mostly the people that are against the Fight for 15, they're basically cherry picking. They're cherry picking on the things that they want you to see, but not the actual reality of the benefits of the Fight for 15.
I totally agree with that. I've actually read a bunch of articles going against it.
All right, folks, you guys heard it here on 600 Seconds. Thank you guys for listening. Join us next week on 600 Seconds. We will be talking about haute cuisine. Thank you.